We start on page 28. It talks about there are two pillars in the German Nazi Party. There's the, I guess we'll do the quick description of these. It's just class warfare bizarreness. On the one side there stood the broad gray mass of the lower middle classes. Small shopkeepers, artisans, employees, small officials, impoverished intellectuals, and renters. Oh, and small and intermediate peasant farmers, between 12 and 15 million people. Now these people were in the brown army of stormtroopers. They had brown shirts. The economic organ of this group, of this column of the Nazis' power, the economic organ was the Fighting League of the Trading Middle Classes, and organized, that's their name, an organization of millions of the fathers, right? So the youngsters march around in troops and the fathers get in this economic organization. The war cry was anti-Semitism. The battle aim, what they were mad about, was destruction of large stores, destruction of consumers' cooperatives, destruction of the one-price stores, destruction of the Jews, abolition of the tax on the middle class, and reinstitution of the medieval guilds. So they wanted small, independent, family-owned businesses to do everything. And they had, Hitler gave them succor in his speeches and stuff. They were part of his power. 12 to 15 million of these people. They want destruction of large stores, chain stores, etc. They want a return to the medieval guilds. This Standordnung. They wanted occupation of the state apparatus by these guilds, transformation of the state into a republic of the sovereign middle class. This is what the brown shirts marched for. Now, lest you think that that's the policy of the Soviet, or pardon me, of the German government altogether, let's continue with the next. On the other side, remember there were two columns. In step with the first column, but without ever mixing with it, there marched the second column, the wealthier traders, the officers, the students and the professional men, higher officials, the sons of large-scale farmers, a force of perhaps 1 to 2 million people. So these are richer, a little more upper class, but still just middle class. This column, better bred, better educated, better fed, better clothed, and therefore still more active, more aggressive in its secret heart, despised the first. So the two columns of power in the Nazi Party hated each other. What was economic policy for the Nazis, ladies and gentlemen? It was a policy of warfare, of civil warfare, economic civil warfare within the state, of two groups with opposite aims trying to get from the other group through government force what they cannot get through free market actions. That's what it has to be. Ayn Rand wrote about this in Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. You think that it is, you think a totalitarian state is a monolithic state? No. It's actually a state in a state of civil war, a state that is fighting itself. It is fighting the people. There is a system of violence going on, dragging out day after day after day. That's what Nazi economic policy was systematic violence protracted over months and years, where some people tried to get what they could from others through the power of the state, and those people were trying to get from these people something through the power of the state they couldn't get through fair trade. So if we look at the essential behind all the actions, anytime the Nazis tried to destroy large conglomerates or tried to make a large conglomerate to destroy little family farms and stuff, whichever one they did, the one thing that they assumed the whole time was the state has total freedom to act and do as it pleases. Doesn't have to care about the individual or individual rights or anything like that. So that's really, you can't get any more essential than that about what Nazi economic policy was. We, the state, have the right to do anything. The individual has no right at all. In any way, no right to economics. People say, well, Nazi economic policy was different from Nazi politics. They say economics and politics are separate. No. Economics and politics are wedded together. Cannot be separated. No more than you can separate your brain from your thoughts. Alright. So this column of 1 to 2 million people, only about 10% the size, it's the upper middle class. Its military organ was called the Protective Guards, the select, specially pampered black shirt Praetorian Guard of the Hitler Party. So the brown shirts and the black shirts. While, for example, in an average brown shirt formation in the east of Berlin, 44% are artisans and technicians, 17% are clerks and small dealers, and 3% are officials. With the black shirts, the proportions are different. Now that sounds weird. It's like, why would it matter what the divisions of all these are? Well, because if you have some sort of ideology that filters different people into different areas of interest, and then you say the state will mediate your interests, then you really start to identify with that group of people. But if, as in America, we don't see a difference between people who own a shop and somebody who works in an office or something, we're all citizens. You know, there may be, we do see some differences, but it seems to be so ingrained and important a way of life and thinking about things for these people. Okay, so the war cry of this column was nationalism, which for the majority of them had the same simple significance as anti-Semitism for the lower middle class. A job. Ultimately, that's what they wanted, and they had different ideas of how they should get jobs from how the small farmer and small businessman thought he should get jobs. And then, quote, their war aims had but little in common with those of the first column. So what they wanted in wartime and what they wanted economically right now from Hitler's regime was basically the opposite of what the first larger column of brown shirts wanted. So the economic policy can't be described in any brilliant decentralized terms, except for the state owns everything. Individuals can keep it as long as they like, but if the state wants to come along and do something, the individual doesn't have anything to say about that. I do have some more. Let's see. I think we will do a little more. Page 31. We skip a couple pages. Alright, we talked about the League of the Trading Middle Class. After Hitler took power, quote, Hitler suddenly declared the revolution to be at an end. Under this watchword, a quite definite and far-reaching operation was in fact carried through: the dispersal and demolition of the fighting league of the trading middle class. Now that didn't make them happy, so we skip down to the end of the page. For a few weeks after the Hitler victory, the fighting league of the trading middle class seemed to be the mightiest organization in the state, drawing the whole of Germany into its orbit. But remember, Hitler's going to liquidate it. And it itself felt itself to be the mightiest league in the nation. Now remember, these are the 10 to 12 million brown shirts, but the elite 1 to 2 million black shirts are what Hitler keeps in his back pocket. Groups and branches of the league covered in hundreds of people the entire country. The new irregular organizations sprang up spontaneously. Local sections of the league, with the brown shirts behind them, held the mastery in the towns. Here's what they do after Hitler takes power. It's a completely new power. The petty bourgeois is trying to behave like revolutionaries. They began to occupy trading businesses, offices, and finance institutions, just as revolutionary workers occupy factories. Right? They aren't factory workers. This isn't a revolution of communism. We're not revolting in the name of factory workers. We're revolting in the name of our interests, the middle class. So they go start taking over finance institutions and stuff. The League's commissars, with and without mandate, appeared at the head of armed brown shirt companies in the department stores, in one-price businesses. That's a business where you don't have to haggle over the price of stuff. In Jewish shops, in all competitive undertakings, in order to take over the actual direction and to get this capital into the hands of the middle class. So it was wholesale robbery. They thought they'd gotten away with it. Hitler was elected. They even entered